Men and teens are trying to find balance in a world that is hating men more and more. Oftentimes, you will not know that someone is about to do the unthinkable. It just happens. And then the family is left in a vacuum to have to pick up the pieces and are usually questioning why this is happening, why they lost their loved ones, and are left with no answers. Have you ever heard of Project Mockingbird? Project Mockingbird was a program that was running when TV first came out. The shows that they would show on TV were called TV programs. And the reason for that is that our government wanted to find out if they could leave a lasting impression on people through these TV programs and subliminal messaging. This program has since been cut off and is not running anymore, but I feel that some of those things, some of those tactics are still being used in our TV and social media today. So, with that said, I would like to talk about men's suicide today. Roughly 3 out of 4 suicides are men. Out of that number, the highest portion are between 20 and 30 years old, survivors of childhood trauma, and also veterans. But there is a small portion of those suicides that don't make any sense. So today, I would like to paint a picture for you of why this is all happening. Not that those other suicides do not matter, but there's something deeper going on in our society that's causing men to take their own lives. So stick with me till the end and let's get into this. In my opening statement, I mentioned Project Mockingbird. And the reason I mentioned that was because in advertisements, social media, shows on Netflix, and things like that, you see men being portrayed as one of 3 things. They're either stupid, or they are weak, or they are dominant to the point of being over masculine and abusive. What this does is when people watch these shows and watch these videos, it leaves that subliminal message and that lasting impression in the person watching the video. If you've got a teenage boy who's 15 years old watching these shows, that is going to stick with that boy. That is going to give him a view of how masculinity is viewed by other people, or how he should be as a masculine role model or as a masculine male, right? This is why it's very important for fathers to stay in the lives of their sons and their daughters, because instead of them seeing that impression on TV, pull them away from those programs, pull them away from TV, be a father and be there and show them what a man is supposed to be, not what they're seeing with the rest of the world. In my opinion, this is being done on purpose. Not only are the boys seeing that, but the girls are also watching these shows and they're seeing the same thing, that men are stupid, weak, or if they're not those 2 things, then they're going to be abusive. This already programs these kids to think this way when they start to date. Now, moving on to someone who's already an adult, this puts in your brain the same exact thing. It doesn't change anything. I think it's just a little more impressionable, because the younger you are, the more impressionable you are, and that kind of starts to paint your way that you view the world. So, with the rise of movements like hate all men are words, and all men are abusive, and we don't need men to have children. All of these feminist movements that have come about here in the last 10 years especially have painted a picture of men being super abusive, super cold, not caring about other people. And so these feminist movements have helped to push forward the rise of suicides in men and them not wanting to be here, self-deletion, things like that, right? When men feel like they're not welcome in society and there's constant badgering from all different directions at one time with the feminist movement and advertisements, movies, things like that, it's no wonder why the suicide rate is going up. Men feel like they're not needed in society anymore. And if they are in society, we are looked at as a burden. Something is wrong with us. We're short-circuited. There's no reason for us to be here, right? So those things can definitely put a huge impression on why this silent epidemic is being pushed further and further and further. One of the other biggest reasons why this is happening too is we see a huge demonization of masculinity. Anything that is considered masculine is also considered toxic. Going to the gym is considered far right. Eating a carnivore diet or eating meat is considered unhealthy and far right and toxic to do that. Any man who is doing things to take better care of himself is also seen as toxic and far right. They're taking everything that makes up a man and a man's biology and the things that we should be doing that are healthy for us and demonizing that, saying that that is a bad thing. Now, add on to the fact that men will work 50 to 60 hours a week. They will barely see their kids if they're divorced, and they're also paying alimony and child support out of most of the money that they make every month. So men are really, really struggling, not only with being bombarded on one side with all of these things that I just talked about, but on the other side of it, also having to deal with economic woes and being able to barely afford to even live or eat. And then they have to take care of their own children when they're at the house as well. I think that these are all being done purposely. These are all tactics that have been done on purpose. In my other episodes on my channel, I talk about Marxism and how there are different tools to Marxism. You have the bag of Marxism, but then you have all these different tools inside of there that are tearing apart society. And I definitely think that this is part and parcel to those tools that are in that Marxist bag. So they're using all of these to tear apart society. This is why I said that there's a deeper thing going on with this. It's not just about childhood trauma, veterans, things like that. There is something that is very deep-seated that is tearing at the fabric of our society. And this is the reason why men are taking their own lives. Another thing you see the demonization of is fighting sports, boxing, MMA, things like that, as being far right or violent, things like that, right? In our society for the last 2,000 years, we have always had a warrior culture and a culture where it was important for men to understand how to fight and to protect themselves. So I feel like a lot of the things that you see with like therapy and a lot of the things that the left talks about where they say, men need to talk about their feelings, men need to talk about their emotions, things like that. I feel like it's more of a gaslighting thing, right? Because they tell us that everything that we do is toxic, far right, we shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But all the things that they say are toxic and that we shouldn't do are the very things that make us not be depressed and make us not feel like we need to go and talk to somebody or that we need to, self-delete ourselves. They're taking away from us with one hand, telling us that we're too toxic, and then with the other hand telling us we should go to therapy and talk about our problems, when they're taking us further and further away from what we should be doing. You should do a fighting sport. You should have a family. You should go to the gym. You should try to be stoic and not go around talking about your feelings all the time as a man. There are different things that you can do that can make you feel better other than taking away those masculine parts of us that matter, the things that we do need, and then telling us we need to go and talk to a therapist. So that's one thing that's always drove me nuts about the left is the gaslighting. And the last thing that I want to touch on is media such as CNN, MSNBC, and shows like The View, who find it very comforting to be able to go on there and boldface in front of everybody, talk crap about men and how men are dangerous. And more specifically, on many different occasions have talked about how white men are the problem and how we are toxic and we are causing a horrible environment in the United States and that we're dangerous, and the list goes on and on and on. While they're talking like this, there are teenage boys who are watching those things that they're saying on there. And then there's also girls who are on there watching the same exact thing. And when they see this is leaving a lasting impression in our brains, whether we want it to or not. You're still listening to those words and they're still seeding themselves in our subliminal part of our brain. This is a huge, huge problem. Most of the time when girls start to hear things like this, they jump on the train of hate all men. And when boys start to hear this, they start to feel left out. They feel like they don't belong in society and that they're worthless. This is a huge problem. And this is why there is a silent epidemic of men who are committing suicide and hurting themselves because they feel like they are not supposed to be in society anymore. So what is the answer to this? How do we counteract what is happening in our society today with men? Number one, the most important thing is to check in on the people that you love. Check in on your brothers, check in on your sons, check in on your cousins, check in on your nephews, check in on your fathers. Make sure that you are checking with these people and asking them, are you okay? Do you need anything? I'm here if you need me. Get them in to speak to someone. Those are extremely important things to do. And I would say that that's probably the number one way that we can stop this, is to check in on the people that you love. If you don't check in on them, you are doing them a disservice. This doesn't matter if you're a mom, a dad, just make sure that you check in on people and ask them how they're doing. I think that one of the biggest things is us kind of constricting ourselves off by ourselves and being lonely can be one of the biggest triggers to why someone is doing self-deletion. When you feel like all of these other things are happening that I talked about in the video, but then if you feel like you don't have anybody to speak to and you don't have anybody in your corner, that makes it even easier for you to go off and do something that you're going to regret, right? Like I said earlier, leaving your family in a vacuum. That's the most horrible part, is your family having to deal with the fact that you're not here anymore. I think the other thing is to do the opposite of what the system wants. The system wants you weak. The system wants you to not go to the gym. The system wants you to not have a family. The system wants you to work 50 to 60 hours and be broke. The system does not want you to try to find another source of income so that you can be your own boss or be your own owner of a company. So do those things. We'll always be working towards a goal. There's nothing wrong with having a job and working 50 to 60 hours. But if you can work towards something that's going to get you paid more and try to get that independence away from the system, that is what you need. The other one is to form a community of men. Try to find a community of other men where you can go to the gym, you can work out together, you can call each other and check on each other. If you are veterans from the military, get a group of you together so that you can speak on those kinds of things, because leaving each other in the dark and going off into your own world and kind of closing off. I do this a lot because I'm kind of an introvert, so I don't talk to a lot of people. Doing that sometimes can make it worse. So creating a community of men to either be, a group of gym guys that go to the gym all the time, or, you do MMA or jiu-jitsu together, do those things together and try to stick together as much as you can. That is how we counteract what is happening. And again, I'm going to emphasize checking on the people that you love. Make sure that you check on people. So with that said, I want to say thank you to all the veterans out there and all of you for going over and risking your life for the people that are here on this side. I am also a veteran. I was in the Air Force, and I have a long line of family that was also veterans. So I just want to say that I appreciate you all. Make sure that you're going and talking to somebody, and we need you to stay here. I also want to say that I appreciate everybody else who has been through their own personal situation, childhood trauma, being on the streets, homeless, institutionalized, all of those things that also causes a lot of men to self-delete, to leads them to suicide. You're appreciated. You're here for a reason. You may have made mistakes, or the people that you grew up with made mistakes, but that does not mean that you are not needed here in society. We're all needed here because we all have to work towards a goal, and we all have family that loves us somewhere. So with that said, I hope you guys like this video. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next one.